Tonight, we need to talk about a statement that sent shockwaves through North America and may ultimately reshape the economic future of an entire continent. Because standing before reporters at the White House, President Donald Trump said something few people expected him to say so openly. He suggested that he is not interested in renewing the very trade agreement that governs economic relations between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The agreement he personally negotiated. The agreement he celebrated as a historic victory. The agreement he once described as the greatest trade deal America had ever signed. Now, he appears willing to walk away from it. And if that happens, the consequences could extend far beyond politics. It could affect the price of the cars we drive, the jobs that support millions of families, the factories that power entire communities, the farms that feed this continent. And perhaps most importantly, it may force Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney into the biggest economic test of his political career. Because this isn't simply about trade, it's about leverage, power, survival, and the future of North America itself. Let's break down what is actually happening. The deal that changed North America. To understand why Trump's comments matter, we first need to understand what is at stake. For decades, North American trade was governed by NAFTA. The North American Free Trade Agreement transformed the continent. Factories expanded, supply chains stretched across borders. Goods moved more freely than ever before, but Donald Trump campaigned aggressively against NAFTA. He argued it had hollowed out American manufacturing. He insisted it encouraged companies to move jobs overseas. He promised to tear it apart. And he did. In its place came the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. It was sold as tougher, fairer, more modern, a deal that put America first. Trump proudly claimed ownership of it. It became one of the defining economic achievements of his first administration, which is exactly why today's developments are so extraordinary. The architect of the agreement is now questioning whether it deserves to survive. That irony alone should tell you something important. This isn't ordinary politics. This is strategic pressure. The July deadline that changes everything. Hidden inside the agreement itself is a mechanism many people never paid attention to. A review process. A checkpoint. A moment when all three countries must effectively ask themselves one question. Do we continue, or do we begin walking away? That checkpoint arrives on July 1st, and unlike political rhetoric, calendars don't bluff. This deadline was written into the structure of the agreement years ago as a safeguard, as a chance to modernize, as a way to force leaders to reassess whether the partnership still serves their interests. Trump's comments didn't emerge randomly. They arrived precisely when they could have maximum impact, maximum leverage, maximum uncertainty. That timing matters, because uncertainty itself is a negotiating weapon. This isn't the end. Yet now here's the part many headlines ignore. If the deal isn't renewed immediately, it doesn't disappear overnight. Borders don't suddenly slam shut. Trucks don't stop moving. Factories don't shut down the next morning. Instead, the agreement enters annual reviews, a prolonged period of uncertainty, a slow-burning negotiation process, one that could theoretically stretch all the way toward 2036. That's important, because it means this isn't a collapse. It's a chess match, and the opening moves have already begun. Trump's negotiating playbook. Anyone who has followed Donald Trump for years recognizes the pattern. First, establish dominance. Second, create uncertainty. Third, force counterparts back to the negotiating table under pressure. Trump argued that America doesn't need Canada nearly as much as Canada needs America. He portrayed the relationship as fundamentally unequal. America holds the leverage. Canada depends on access. Canada should therefore make concessions. Whether you agree with that assessment or not is almost beside the point, because the message wasn't designed to reassure markets. It was designed to shift psychology, to remind everyone who possesses the larger economy, who has the larger consumer market, who believes they can withstand disruption longer than their neighbors. This is negotiation through intimidation. And historically, it's a strategy Trump has embraced repeatedly, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. The Canadian dilemma, and now we arrive at Mark Carney. Because few leaders envy the position he now finds himself in. Canada cannot simply ignore the United States. Nearly every major Canadian industry depends heavily on access to American markets. Energy, automobiles, agriculture, mining, manufacturing, lumber. Millions of Canadian jobs are directly or indirectly connected to cross-border trade. The United States buys roughly 3/4 of Canada's exports. Think about that. Imagine operating a business where one customer represents 75% of your revenue. Then imagine that customer suddenly suggesting they may change the rules. That is Canada's reality. Carney understands this. But he also understands something else. Canadians expect him to defend their interests, to stand firm, to protect jobs, to resist appearing weak, which means he must walk an almost impossible tightrope. Give too much, and he's accused of surrender. Give too little, and he risks years of economic uncertainty. Every move carries consequences. Every word matters. Every decision will be scrutinized. This may become the defining challenge of his premiership. The industries on the front line. For ordinary people, trade disputes sound abstract, until they touch your paycheck. Canada isn't fighting for symbolism, it's fighting for industries that form the backbone of its economy. Steel, aluminum, automobiles, softwood lumber. Steel workers in Ontario, auto assembly employees, lumber communities across British Columbia. Thousands upon thousands of families depend on these sectors. Tariffs increase costs, reduce competitiveness, delay investment, discourage expansion. And over time, uncertainty itself becomes toxic. Companies hesitate. Projects get postponed. Hiring slows. Capital seeks stability elsewhere. Trade wars don't simply affect governments. They affect dinner tables, mortgages, retirement plans, university tuition, real lives. Mexico's quiet strategy. While much attention focuses on Canada, Mexico is pursuing its own calculations. Mexico understands the stakes. Its manufacturing sector has become deeply integrated into North American supply chains. Automobiles, electronics, agriculture, industrial components. The country has enormous incentives to preserve stability. Yet Mexico also sees opportunity. If Canada stumbles, if American negotiators prioritize certain relationships, if concessions are distributed unevenly, Mexico could emerge stronger. That's why negotiations continue. Behind closed doors, away from cameras. 3 countries, 3 agendas. One shared economic framework under extraordinary strain. It isn't diplomacy, it's chess. 3-dimensional chess. And every player knows one wrong move could reshape the board for decades. What this means for you. Maybe you're wondering, why should I care? Because trade isn't some distant concept discussed only by economists. Trade determines prices. Jobs, supply chains, inflation, economic growth. The car you drive may contain components that cross these borders multiple times before reaching a dealership. The food in your refrigerator, the appliances in your home, the materials inside your walls. North America has evolved into one interconnected production system. Disrupting that system carries costs, not just for corporations, but for ordinary families trying to stretch their paychecks. When uncertainty rises, investments slow, markets react, businesses hesitate, consumers ultimately pay the price. Trade agreements shape daily life in ways most people never notice, until suddenly they do. What happens next? Several scenarios are now emerging. Scenario 1. The rhetoric proves stronger than reality. Negotiators reach compromises. The agreement survives. Trump declares victory. Carney claims he defended Canadian interests. Markets stabilize. Life moves on. Scenario 2. The negotiations drag on. Annual reviews create prolonged uncertainty. Businesses delay investment. Economic anxiety slowly builds. Nobody wins outright. Everyone absorbs some damage. Scenario 3. Talks collapse completely. Tariffs escalate. Trade relations deteriorate. North America enters a period of sustained economic fragmentation. This remains the least likely outcome, but it can no longer be dismissed. Because once uncertainty enters the system, confidence becomes fragile, and confidence is the invisible fuel that keeps economies moving. The bigger picture. What fascinates me most isn't simply whether the agreement survives. It's what this moment reveals about the changing nature of global economics. For decades, integration was considered inevitable. Trade barriers fell. Supply chains expanded. Efficiency became king. But today's world looks different. National security, economic resilience, domestic manufacturing, strategic independence. These priorities increasingly compete against globalization. Countries are asking difficult questions. How dependent is too dependent? How much efficiency should be sacrificed for security? How much leverage should another nation possess over your economy? Trump's comments tap directly into those questions, and regardless of your political views, they reflect a broader shift happening around the world. The era of unquestioned globalization may be ending. An era of strategic competition may be replacing it, and North America now stands at the center of that transformation. Final thoughts. As of this moment, nothing has officially collapsed. The agreement remains intact. Negotiators continue talking. The trucks still cross the border. Factories still operate. Workers still report for their shifts. But something important has changed. The assumption of certainty is gone. The ground beneath one of the world's most successful trading partnerships has shifted. Donald Trump has once again introduced unpredictability into a system built on predictability. Mark Carney now faces the challenge of protecting Canadian interests without triggering unnecessary escalation. Mexico is maneuvering to secure its own advantage, and businesses across the continent are watching closely, preparing for whatever comes next. This story isn't over. In many ways, it's only beginning. The weeks ahead may determine whether North America emerges stronger through compromise or more divided through confrontation. One thing is certain. The decisions made behind closed doors over the coming months will shape the economic future of millions of people who may never realize just how much depended on these negotiations. And when historians look back at this moment, they may not remember it simply as another trade dispute. They may remember it as the moment North America decided what kind of economic future it wanted to build. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis helpful, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. The story is moving quickly, and we'll continue following every development so you understand not just what happened, but what it actually means.